Enrique Iglesias was Technical Secretary of the Commission of Investments and Economic Development between the 1960s and 1967, President of the Central Bank of Uruguay between 1967 and 1968, Executive Secretary of CEPAL between 1972 and 1985, Minister of Foreign Relations of Uruguay between 1985 and 1988, President of the IDB between 1988 and 2005, and General Secretary of the General Secretariat of the Ibero-American Secretariat between 2005 and 2014. So we welcome and ask you to join us here on stage, Accountant Enrique Iglesias, with a great round of applause.
Gracias. Señor Ministro.
Mr. Minister, Executive Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, a good piece of news. This is not going to be a lecture. So then later we're going to have presentations on this topic. I'm not an expert on this, but I can tell you how we got here. And basically, that's going to be my speech today. First of all, I would like to say that I remember in the 70s, there were very active times when in '69, the General Assembly of the United Nations, a report was presented, a report written by two experts from the Rome Club. And basically that document was about natural resources disappearing. There was a global reaction to that document because we were facing this challenge of natural resources disappearing, of course, and oil producers were especially concerned about this, and that had an important, a significant impact on the price of oil, as you remember, and it reached very, very high prices. The Secretary General at the time thought it was the right time to do something about that, and it invites to have a general conference on the environment, and that took place in Stockholm in June the 6th, 1972. That was the first time in the history of humankind that showed the concern of human beings about the environment. There were huge impacts. There were impacts on politics and also in the technical world. I had the opportunity of working in the preparation of that conference together with Maurice Strom, a brilliant Canadian mind, and I learned a lot about that topic because we had several meetings promoting the issue of the environment in Latin America, in Africa, Middle East, Asia, and of course in the developed world. And at that moment we started learning about the importance of this topic, and then there was a huge demand to the oil sector of actions, and that had an impact on international economy, of course. Because of this, after the conference and during that period of time, that idea of creating Olave appeared. I was there, it was 1973, I think, November the 2nd. Right, yeah, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary. I was there as the executive director of ICLAC, and we really wanted to have a body as well. It was the first time that we were having a shared agency, something that was very relevant to the region and to the rest of the world, to try to do something when facing that challenge of natural resources disappearing. It wasn't very easy to create this agency. There were some doubts. but we created that organization, and in '73 we started with what today is a reality. As our executive director said, it's an important pillar from which to look into the future. Immediately after that, there were some new concerns about the good use of energy resources, and there was another initiative, and I also was the executive secretary. That was the creation of Renewable Energies Conference that took place in Nairobi in 1972. And in that conference, there were 14 different sources of energy. Don't ask me to remember which were those 14 new resources. We had biomass, wind, etc., etc. And again, people felt that something needed to be done regarding that topic, and to start working in these new sources of energy. It was a beautiful conference. It really raised awareness, not only at government level, but also at company level and society level. I remember the impact it had on the different African communities. At that moment, to the concern of the World Bank, they were therefore deforestation was an important issue in Africa at the time. I remember. I think that the United Nations were building little by little and raising awareness about the importance of energy to society, the world, and the future of humankind. And on this concept, as our minister said, we are starting new times. And that is what we see today. The future is not only about improving the past, but also to think about these new times we are living in. There are significant dangers and opportunities ahead. Latin America, remember that at the time we had significant resources. We have mineral resources, green resources. We have 30% of drinkable water in the world. I think that the region will play a very relevant role in the future, so that we play the role that we deserve as a region and as a people. As the executive director mentioned, I believe that we need to be aware that Latin America has a huge potential and that we need to lead this process, and that requires unity, and organizations as OLADE are part of that process. And I think that in that sense, and this topic is way more important than it was in the past, because we're having some changes. We have new players, we have new actors, new leaders, so we are going in these times of uncertainty, and in those times these organizations are very important, and we need to highlight the collaborative aspects of all this to take into account the future, the rational exploitation of those resources, and how we move as a civilization to the future. I believe that with the huge experience that OLADE has and the perspective of negotiation at different levels and with different objectives, OLADE really has a role to play in the future. Thank you very much.
Bien, si me permite, contador Iglesias, un segundito nada.
If you just allow me, Mr. Iglesias, because the Uruguayan government, represented by the Ministry of Industry, Mining and Energy, would like to acknowledge your work. That's why we have Mr. Paganini and the new minister, and we would like to invite the director, Fitzgerald Cantero, that will be giving Mr. Iglesias a recognition for his work. Thank you very much for your work. That plaque says for your continuous effort in the global energy sector. And that was a lecture, believe me. Sir, wise words, thank you for that. So today we're here celebrating the 8th edition of the Energy Week, together with the first investment forum for energy transition for Latin America, and to reaffirm our commitment to regional policies. We will have more than 40 events with different experts from the region and the world. We're going to be sharing experiences to make progress to a more efficient and more sustainable future. Remember that you can have access to digital content with the hashtag Energy Week Irene Forum. Thank you very much for being here today. We now invite you to enjoy these days here in Uruguay. Thank you very much.
Integración, la cooperación, la equidad y la eficiencia energética. OLADE celebra 50 años de trabajar